It's been 6 months since cash bail was eliminated in Illinois. How are police and prosecutors adjusting?
Our overtime hours have increased significantly.
But the county jail is not nearly as full as it has been. That's coming up on WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. Also on today's show, a scholar coming to ISU explains how police departments have become increasingly militarized.
Local police departments could get military surplus equipment, so they get these MRAPs, they get all these grenade launchers.
And students at a Bloomington school really like to play chess and to win.
I just feel really happy, I just got a really good move, and I feel like I'm just going to win the game now.
The school set a new state record for success. Those stories follow a Bloomington Normal News update just ahead. This is Sound Ideas on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network. From the campus of Illinois State University in Normal, this is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. The elimination of cash bail brought change to every step of Illinois' criminal justice system last September. It's been nearly 6 months since the Pretrial Fairness Act became law in Illinois. Criminal justice advocates cheered the new law, saying that a person's financial means should not be a barrier to freedom as they await trial. Law enforcement generally took a more critical view. WGLT's Lindsay Jones has more on what those changes look like here in McLean County.
The Pretrial Fairness Act went into effect on September 18th, ushering in a series of sweeping changes at nearly every level of the criminal justice system. From how or whether people are arrested, released, or held, it's all been impacted by PFA. For some counties, these changes came as a culture shock. This is McLean County Sheriff Matt Lane.
There are some counties that didn't do much of anything. And they were scrambling when this first came about. And they may not have that type of relationship with all the parties involved.
But here in McLean County, the shift wasn't nearly as jarring. Lane says that's due in part to collaboration between various branches of the criminal justice system locally, who came together and mapped out how things would work well in advance. Among the concerns were ensuring that people would actually show up for their court appearances if released.
We got started getting together a year in advance, 6 months in advance anyway, to plan this out and how we were going to do it with the judges and all the participating parties. And it really did make things much easier and run a lot smoother.
Lane, like other McLean County law enforcement officials, reports the increased workload is among the biggest noticeable changes. With cash bail off the table as a means of determining whether a person remains incarcerated while their legal case proceeds, the law requires a hearing be held within 48 hours of a person's arrest. That's resulted in increased workloads as both prosecutors and police work to quickly gather and complete reports and other paperwork used in those hearings. Judges are tasked with determining whether a person qualifies for pretrial release and under what conditions they will be released. Some offenses, like violent crimes or felonies, disqualify a person from pretrial release. Judges weigh evidence from prosecutors and defense attorneys before deciding. Here's Bloomington's Chief of Police, Jamal Symington.
Our overtime hours have increased significantly, especially for homicides, for instance, because those reports have to be done before that person goes before a judge to determine whether he or she will be detained.
Symington says that's created needs that have not been accounted for in the city's police budget yet.
So I've had officers having to work double shifts, sometimes just to get reports done for those violent crimes. So that becomes problematic at times, but we know that's part of it.
Symington adds that when the city moves into a new budget cycle, the overtime needs will be reflected accordingly. But with just 6 months of no cash bail being in effect, he says more data collection is necessary to determine what the new ask will be. Both Twin Cities police chiefs say training for the Act's new requirements was among the largest challenges, in part because of how much was needed. Here's Normal Police Chief Steve Petrelli.
That was a lot of work on the state's attorney side. I'd like to give the state's attorney credit, specifically Brad Rigdon down at the state's attorney's office did a lot of work getting our officers prepared, holding training sessions, working through problems, scenarios that could come up.
Petrelli says the department even made flowcharts to guide officers through administrative changes.
If it's A, you go this route. If it's B, you kind of go this route. And once you learn those things, it becomes kind of like second nature. But really the timeliness of the reports and then learning the flow of how you handle certain offenses now so it's in accordance with the act. And that was really just a training issue.
Bloomington Chief Jamal Symington says the new rules behind no cash bail were a greater adjustment for some of the department's more experienced officers.
The officers, especially the veterans who've been working a different system for 20 or more years, had concerns and policy-wise. So we knew it was important to amp up the training to make sure that they were comfortable when the switch happened.
Both Bloomington Normal police chiefs say they believe officers have adjusted to the new system well. And with fewer criminal offenses qualifying as detainable under the new law, the amount of people jailed at the McLean County Detention Center has dropped since September, as predicted. Sheriff Matt Lane says the jail now averages 25 fewer inmates a day.
We were sitting usually around 200 people, 200 inmates at the beginning of this. Now we're around 175. Is pretty steady.
Public Defender Ron Lewis says the PFA's changes have been particularly important to clients who appreciate the ability to continue going to work or taking care of other responsibilities while a legal case is pending and they are presumed innocent, instead of remaining in jail until enough bail money is raised. On the administrative and prosecutorial end, State's Attorney Erica Reynolds says her office has had to adjust how some of its support staff works. Reynolds says so far the office hasn't had to hire additional staff as a direct result of the Pretrial Fairness Act. With reporting from Edith Brady-Lunny, I'm Lindsay Jones.
Before September, Illinois followed a pattern seen in other states where jails held mostly pretrial detainees who are presumed innocent. Statistics on how the Pretrial Fairness Act has impacted jail populations and court systems statewide are being compiled by Loyola University in Chicago. Coming up a little later on Sound Ideas, hear how police departments have become increasingly militarized, though it's not an entirely new concept. Listen in 8 minutes.